Greetings and salutations, people of the internet. Austin here. I've returned from my break, and this wasn't the video I originally planned to come back with, but that project has ballooned in terms of work needed, so in the meantime, we return to the Kyria Preserve one more time. Havoc has plagued the preserve as strange rifts began appearing all over after an odd sound was heard off the coastline. The director of the park has asked you to investigate and bring order back before the new arrivals, both planned and not, destroy everything. Sit back, relax, and pick your new teams as Operation Mythic Hunt is a go. Oh, and please make sure to watch the outro to this video if you watch nothing else. I have some news I gotta talk to y'all about at the end. But without further ado, let's begin. Postera, the mailman Pokemon. First up, our Nassic region representative for this DLC in the form of the worm from the Agadizgaza myth. Pretty sure I still screwed up that pronunciation, but I digress. This would be the counterpart to Agadisiza. Since the worm in the myth was a messenger for the gods, I thought making this Pokemon into a mailman would be a good secondary design theme. The first pass was mid. I tried in that pass to make it where the hat was made out of rock or earth, but it just looked terrible. Outside of the eye shape and the overall expression, the first pass just sucked. The next pass was essentially the final draft, more or less. The only thing I needed to do was fix up the dirt around the body to make it feel more balanced, and to add the semi-postage stamp mark around the eyes. I know it's not a full stamp shape-wise. I tried that and it just did not look good. The shiny is just kinda whatever if I'm being honest. But overall, this goober was a fun start to the DLC. Vinikian Trashhog, the Abyss Pig Pokemon. A double representative for both the Texan and Vanek regions, this line is the first of many Kaiju Pokemon in this DLC. Sue me, I like drawing Kaiju Pokemon, and this was my best opportunity to design a bunch of them I've had on the books, but I could not fit into other regions. This little piggy is based on the Brambleboar from Monarch Legacy of Monsters, though it's more apparent with the evolution, admittingly. The design itself wasn't super difficult. I only really needed to adjust the bramble tusks and to reposition the legs and the back for this design to be all good to go. No, the colors are what took the longest. I decided on the blue skin since the source material kind of has a bluish gray tint to it, and I just thought it looked pretty. Balancing everything around that took some time. Admittingly, the shinies for this line aren't fantastic. They're not base Gengar bad, but I could have done more. Brambor, the Abyss Pig Pokemon. This big ol' piggy evolves from Vinikian Trashhog when exposed to a Dusk Stone, now taking even more inspiration from the Brambleboar. This design was hell. The brambles on the back and the distribution of the grass pelt took so many damn passes to get right. It was nutty. In the second pass, I added the eyebrows, but that's about it in terms of the additions kept from that one. I did have the brambles facing forward in one pass, but that didn't last long. It was around the fourth pass that things started to come together, mainly for the back of this Pokemon. I did have to adjust the front legs for this guy in the following passes. They were originally way too long, and I wanted a bit more of a stocky build. The shade of blue for the skin took so damn long to iron out, but I was adamant about keeping the blue. Oh, before I forget, yes, this is the first Fakemon project where I actually list the stats on the Pokedex. I had done stats separately in a previous project, and I got so sick of having to write them down after the fact, so I said screw it and just put them in my new dex layout. You will eventually see said projects in the future whenever I get to them. Mana Yifu, the fashionable Pokemon. Our Mihan region representative, this is based on the Chinese Mono and Chinese fashion. I wanted to include more actually rare animals in this DLC that I missed in the reboot. So these birds fit the bill perfectly, especially with the sexual dimorphism of the species. The fashion trend was a suggestion that popped up when I listed these two were next on the docket. Honestly, it saved the whole line before it could even begin, since I did not have a secondary theme for this line at all at the time. The males act like peacocks, using their bright colors to try and woo the females, who are absolutely just done with them. In this stage, I modeled the clothes to look like more traditional children's clothing. These two went through more than a few passes since the original design was just underbaked. I had to redo the head and the feet proportions since they felt more flightless coated than I wanted. I added the feathers on the head to look more like hats and to help break up their silhouettes a little bit better. Color-wise, that also took a minute to get right, especially with the balance of hues and the complexity overall, especially with the male one. The green was added to be more eye-catching, pun intended. These designs were overall fine, but the Evos were a lot more fun. Shimoshong, the courting birds Pokemon. For the evolution, I turned up the drip meter, wanting to make sure these two stood out in a crowd. The first pass got the overall designs down, but the proportions and some of the posing needed work, especially for the male. I did have to repose the female version more, since it was more uninteresting than I wanted it to be. So I had the legs sticking out of the dress to make the silhouette more dynamic. I also had to tone down the pattern on her dress to not be completely overwhelming at a glance. The cleanup pass was more or less the final design for these two, with some minor adjustments here and there. Though I did mainly have to make the female's wings bigger, make the legs stand out a little bit more, and change the male's face pattern and eye shape to what you see now. These two were definitely easier to draw, even if the dress slit for the female was an absolute nightmare at the time. Brudagon, the hatchling Pokemon. A brand new baby Pokemon added to the collection. This is the pre-evolved form of Druddigon, which evolves into that Pokemon at level 25. I went through so many passes with this little goober. For a long time, this just felt like a downscaled Druddigon. The eggshell pants were a suggestion I ran with and eventually expanded more into with this design. This had wings at one point, but I removed them since I felt it helped lessen the overall comparison to the middle stage of that line. I did have the eggshell covering most of the body at one point until I downsized into what you see here after a lot of trial and error. This is definitely the most effort I've put into a baby Pokemon until now, but I do like looking at it when comparing the entire line, especially with the third stage I added in the Vanek reboot. Go check that video out if you haven't already. Silkumo, the web rain Pokemon. We have double kaiju goodness with this line, with this stage being based on Kumonga from Son of Godzilla. This oversized spider kaiju has been long overdue to be made into a fakemon, so this DLC was the perfect place to bring it in. I decided to throw in some elements from the singular point design, mainly for the legs, since I thought it made it look more interesting. First pass wasn't bad, all things considered, but it was underbaked. I added a third set of legs after some feedback, though I did need to reposition said legs during development just to get a right balance for this Pokemon. The colors weren't too hard to iron out. Kumonga itself has a solid palette. The shiny is another reference to the singular point design. As fun as this Pokemon was, the evolution is where the real meat and potatoes are. Abadoom, the spider progenitor Pokemon. This skittery asshole evolves from Silkumo via exposure to an Ectostone and is based on Titanus Abaddon from Kong Survivor Instinct. When this Titan was introduced, I knew I was going to make a fakemon out of it one day. Combining the line with Kumunga didn't happen until much later, but it made sense in hindsight. I had to really lock in to make this Pokemon more distinct from another ghost-type spider I have in the previous project. The base design was pretty easy to get down, but I did have some issues with the colors. Originally, this was going to be brown like Silkumo, but I decided to make it dark blue to feel more ghosty and to better resemble Abaddon. The ectoplasm pouring out of the eye sockets was a lot of fun to render and design. I wish I could take credit for this name, but alas, I cannot. Korate, the sea squirrel Pokemon. Time to switch gears when it comes to references, as this little lady is based on Sandy Cheeks from SpongeBob SquarePants. This Pokemon was a suggestion I was happy to do since I was really lacking in Tex-Skin region representatives in the Preserve. The coral karate gloves were a lot of fun to design, easily the highlight of it. The first pass more or less knocked it out of the park. At most, I needed to tighten up some of the shapes and the proportions, especially with the legs. Originally, the coral gloves were going to be green, but I changed it to orange after some discussion for better color contrast, so I just moved the green to the shiny. Said shiny is also a reference to Sandy's superhero costume, loosely, mind you. No major notes otherwise for this Pokemon, it was just solid all around. Solitreak, the skunk Pokemon, the first of many new evolutions added to the Preserve. This is the evolved form of Skuntank when exposed to a sludge stone. I based this literal stinker off of the Florida skunk ape. I've been meaning to do more cryptid Pokemon for a while, and this was a great time to do it. Design-wise, this wasn't too difficult. I knew I wanted it to be bipedal and for the tail to act as a giant pseudo-pompadour. Some of the proportions needed some work, but nothing major enough to delve into further. The colors are what gave me the most trouble. Well, the color balance, to be more accurate, specifically with the tail. Originally, the bottom of the tail was the same tan color as the stomach, but after some feedback, I turned it into the lighter purple accents you see here. This is a solid evolution all around. Hell, I think this batch of new evolutions are some of the strongest I've ever made. And Vino, the Anvil Pokemon. This tiny cutie is our rep for the Athnos region. It'll make more sense when you get to the evolution, and is based off of rhinos and anvils. The first sketch got the broad strokes down well enough, but it needed some work. The legs were too thin for starters, I didn't like the ear shape, and the body needed more of a separation around the tail. I also had to simplify the toes on this Pokemon. This originally had more traditional rhino feet, but I didn't like them after going back and forth on the issue. The last thing I had to do is make this feel more 3D in the perspective department, which I mainly did through the face. This stage is serviceable, but I love the evolution, which, let's be real, is a trend I'm going with this video. Volkmorn, the Forgeback Pokemon. This unit evolves from Anvino once it learns Overheat, now adding blacksmithing into the design elements. This and Athnosian Tinkaton share the Hephaestus inspiration, so I decided to have them be in a symbiotic relationship as detailed in the Dex entry. Okay, it's a stretch calling this the Athnos region representative, but I still stand by it. The perspective work was easily the hardest thing about this design, mainly with the legs and the upper part of the back and horn. I knew I wanted the back to be superheated, like an anvil in a forge. Yes, I know they really don't heat up. Shut up, it looks cool. I had to reposition the back and the legs multiple times to get this close to looking correct perspective-wise. Color-wise, I did have to swap the gray accents on the legs for some better color balancing. Again, the superheated back was easily the most fun thing to render, even if it's far from perfect. I really love the shiny on this one, I just think it looks so clean. Grand Model, the refined Pokemon. Our first version specific evolution. This is the evolved form of Delcatty when exposed to an ice stone. It's based off of Palace Cats, Grandmas, and Knitting. The first pass wasn't too bad, all things considered. It got the broad strokes of the design well enough, but it wasn't bulky enough to really look like a Palace Cat, nor did it have enough Grandma vibes. So I bulked the Pokemon up, I changed the eye shape, and I gave it little wrinkles. For a long time, this did have a tiny pair of glasses for a pattern on the face, but I had to scrap it because I could not make it look natural despite my best efforts, which was a real shame. I added the pins to the neck since I wanted to keep that motif from Delcatty, though I moved them to the bottom to kind of give the illusion of a pattern of a shawl worn by some older women in different countries. I added the jewel on the forehead to give the head more of a focal point and to make the Pokemon feel more distinguished. The color balancing took a while for the tips of the pins, but I got there eventually. The ability this Pokemon got would do so many nerfs just to get to this point. This thing was originally busted. Crocanide, the invasive toad Pokemon. The other side of our first version exclusive evolutions. This evolves from Toxicroak once it reaches level 45 and is based on cane toads and supervillains. I had the idea to make a cane toad Pokemon after learning about the invasive species to Australia via Morpars. I did debate making this a mega evolution at one point, but I thought making it a normal evolution was more interesting. I got pretty close with the first sketch, but a few things needed further development. The horn was too short for starters. I was given the idea to get into a pseudo pompadour after some feedback, which really looked good. The mustache and forearms needed to be bigger, and the middle fingers needed to be more detailed to really feel intimidating. I loved rendering the poison sacs across the body to reference the cane toad, though I changed them from white to yellow for some color balancing. I had a lot of fun making that shiny. I think that looks really good. Boggy Bear, the swamp bear Pokemon. Next up, these lads are based on Louisiana black bears and their habit of occasionally using swamps as their homes. I got pretty damn close with this Pokemon in the early passes. I mainly just needed to add the color variation on the mud covering the body and making the muzzle the same tan color of the paws. Oh, I also did have to smooth out the shapes along the back to help it stand out against the mud around the area. I made the shiny green to kind of look like swamp muck, and I made the brown a lot lighter. Admittingly, this is not the greatest shiny of the DLC roster, but it's solid enough. Mud Coat was too fitting not to bring back for this Pokemon. Swampa, the swamp bear Pokemon. The evolution here gave me way more trouble than I wanted. The first pass wasn't hitting like I wanted it to, so I tried something completely different for the second pass. Unfortunately, it was a major downgrade, so I went back to the OG pass and made some alterations. I played with the proportions more, making the head smaller, the tail a lot bigger, while I also changed the pose for the front legs to give it a little bit more of a dynamic action. I added the reeds along the back to help give the Pokemon more of a silhouette, and to help with the overall color balancing for the green accents. When I was doing the line work for the mud sections of the body using the colored outline, I liked it so much I went back and recolored the mud line work on Boggy Bear. Technically speaking, this isn't the most complex or in-depth Pokemon, but I think this is a solid line nonetheless. Bahasian Baniri, the rabbit Pokemon. Our final regional variant of the DLC, this line is based off of Carmen Sandiego, both of the OG and the Netflix versions. This was a suggestion/request from a longtime collaborator, and I just thought the idea was fun. I'd never done anything with a Lopunny line before, and I thought it was time to fix that. Honestly, the first pass got the design down damn near perfectly, only needing a few minor touch-ups. Color-wise, I did have to move a few colors around to get the balance down to where I wanted it. Not much else to say with this one, sorry. I feel like I don't really need to go into the ability choice if you know the character. Bahasian Lopunny, the rabbit Pokemon. The evolution here is based around the Netflix version, so I wanted it to feel more sleek and mobile. The first pass was overall good, but I needed to make a few big changes. The initial expression was weak sauce, so that needed an update. The hands were boring, so I added the fingers back. I will say, I do think the fur collar needed a bit more work in hindsight. The shade of red on the jacket and the hat also needed some adjustments in the final stages. Yeah, overall, these were some of the easiest regional variants I've ever done, so I don't think I have to go into a lot of detail about the design process. But unlike that, I do have a lot to say with the next Pokemon line. Dungrunt, the Stink Bomb Pokemon. Fun fact, the original versions of this line were among the first Pokemon I ever drew, even before I created the Sendine region, when I was still just drawing random Pokemon ideas with no rhyme or reason. I'd been meaning to bring these guys into the fold of a proper region for years now, so this DLC was the perfect opportunity. This Pokemon is based off of dung beetles, grenades, and soldiers. I originally was going to rename this Pokemon Grubnade, but I kept the original after some thought. I tried to keep the original design intact with this rework, but it just did not work well in practice, so I made it more humanoid so it could carry the giant stink bomb, plus give it less of a comparison to the official dung beetle Pokemon we have with the Rapska line. Since I hate doing camo patterns, I try to minimize it as much as I could, if just to prevent more visual clutter. I did have to redo the back leg after I realized the perspective had been off for a while. As difficult as this Pokemon was, the evolution was even worse in that regard. Gorillasect, the Stink Bomb Pokemon. This toxic insurgent evolves from Dungrunt when exposed to a hive stone, now being based off of stink bugs and gorilla fighters. I loved the idea of this Pokemon even back then, so I wanted to keep as much as I could from the original design. The first pass wasn't bad, but it just didn't feel like a Pokemon to me. So, in the next pass, I flipped the Pokemon around so we were more focused on the shell, and so I didn't have to redraw the torso. I added the gas mask pattern on the back of the shell, though it would be updated later on to the current design. I did have to shrink the leg with a touch early on, some of the arm length while I was at it. The proportions just didn't feel right for this design initially. The colors were an absolute nightmare to get right. I had to change the shade of brown for the body so many times, as well as adjusting the green accents. Hell, at one point, I removed one shade of brown entirely, since the entire thing was just getting too damn complicated. Lastly, I added the purple to the gas mask just to help break things up. I'm really glad I added this Pokemon to my catalog, even if it was a giant pain in the ass. Barurora, the Rainbow Spike Pokemon. More kaiju fun added to the region. We have a pair of version exclusives. This one is based off of Barugon from Gamera vs. Barugon. Not Baragon, Barugon. Two very different kaiju. This absolute freak was actually pretty easy to translate into a fakemon. The only thing I needed to change from the initial pass was changing the shape of the tongue to that of a diamond at the end. I thought it made it feel more like an ice type. You might be wondering why this Pokemon has rainbow spikes on the back. Oh, that's simple. Barugon has a rainbow death beam. No, I'm not fucking with you. That is a legit thing from the movie. Same thing with the freezing tongue, hence where the ice type comes into play. I made it a normal type since I need more type diversity with my kaiju Pokemon, and frankly, normal fits this boy the best. Rendering the rainbow crystals was a lot of fun. I had to do some layer shenanigans to make it work, but it was more than worth it. This is one of my faves, easily. Mount Thuzula, the mountain-back Pokemon. On the other side of version exclusivity, this unit is based on everyone's favorite legal drama and walking mountain, Methuselah. The first pass of this design was super mid. Like, it got the rough ideas well enough, but I wasn't happy with it at all. In the next pass, I made the arms and backs a lot more 3D to really sell the shapes of the body and the mountain imagery. The colors went through a lot of passes as well, mainly the shade of tan for the body and the red of the accents. Had to tweak those more than any others so the hue and saturation weren't too close to one another. I had to redo the shading multiple times, both adjusting how dark the shadows got, but also the angle of the light source. I think I redid the shading for this Pokemon more than any other in my catalog to my present knowledge. I love this Pokemon, but my god, it was a hassle. Fuwat, the mascot mouse Pokemon. This line is based off of woolly mice. When I learned about these genetically engineered cuties, I had to make a Pokemon based on them. They've been on the books for a while now. Unfortunately, the first pass of this design sucked. The shapes were there, the general idea was there, the execution was dog shit. I had the idea to make this thing a man-made Pika clone once my second pass didn't do much to improve the initial design. I made it more adorable and had it standing up on two legs, but it still wasn't enough. Hiding the eyes on this stage sadly didn't work as well as I wanted it to, so I had to save that for the evolution. I made the head and the body floof less separated. I showed off the eyes and made it look a lot more friendly after I increased the size of the head just a smidgen more. After some feedback, I added these stress lines under the eyes to show how anxious this poor bugger is and to give it some much needed character. Despite how much work I put into this Pokemon, I still easily prefer its evolution. Mammouse, the woolly mouse Pokemon. This floofer evolves from Fuwat once exposed to a thunderstone and plays heavily with the woolly part of the woolly mouse, adding in some mammoth elements. Unlike the Prevo, the first pass was almost perfect. The only thing that needed to be updated were the angle of the tusks. That took a few tries to fix, but otherwise, this Pokemon was smooth sailing compared to Fuwat. Color-wise, I wanted this Pokemon to be darker overall, if just to help the two stages feel more distinct. This isn't a super complicated design, so I can't force myself to yap about this one much more. I really do love the shade of purple on the shiny. I think that looks really nice. Admiral, the Sea Captain Pokemon. Our next cross-gen evolution of the region, we have the evolved form of Pelipper once it reaches level 45 while in the water. This Pokemon is based on Dalmatian pelicans and sea captains. The first pass was pretty solid. I made an effort to make sure it didn't look too much like Pelipper since I didn't want it to feel more like a mega evolution. Outside of some perspective issues, which I ironed out by flipping the canvas, the only real change I made was adding a third feather to the bandana around its neck. I really wish I could take credit for the name, but alas, I cannot. I know some people might feel this changes too much from Pelipper to be a proper evolution, but I'm okay with drastic shifts between evolution stages personally. I understand the argument, however. Still, I think this is one of the strongest new evolutions I've made in a long time. Also, yes, Eviolite Pelipper would be a nightmare. I'm not sorry for that mental image. Karacruel, the mental poison Pokemon. Another Pokemon I've had on the docket for a while. And another missed opportunity in the Sendine region, this monster is based on the Irukandji jellyfish. The overall design didn't change too much during development, only making the tinier tentacles on the bottom a lot thicker. No, what changed the most were the colors. Originally, the yellow was limited only to the eyes, but after some feedback, I added it to more across the body as an accent color. I decided to have these sections glow to draw attention to the design, and personally, I just thought it looked neat. I really do like how it came out. This species of jellyfish was a lot of fun to play around with. Again, this is another Pokemon I cannot take credit for the name of, sadly. Tokid, the lucky gecko Pokemon. This cutie and its evolution are based on Tokay geckos. The first pass got pretty close, but I did not push it far enough. After some feedback, I massively bulked up the tail to make it the focal point of the design. I did also have to reposition the legs for a better sense of balance, but that wasn't too labor intensive. I gave it super luck for an ability since in some cultures these geckos are considered lucky. I do wish I made the purple darker and the shiny in hindsight. Oh well, this is still a solid little goober. Tokrai, the lung lizard Pokemon. This unit evolves when Tokid once exposed to a Harmony Stone. I wanted this to be a radical difference when it evolved, so I made this sucker fierce as fuck. I made the neck a lot thicker and longer, really selling that this thing can draw in a lot of air and be loud. I did have to make the tail bigger in the following passes, alongside adding a slight separation between the tail and torso. The legs once again had to be repositioned to feel more balanced. I love the waveform back spikes. I always think shit like that is a fun addition if you're paying attention to a design. The colors did take more than a few tries to iron out, mainly the accents on the throat and tail. Originally they were a pale blue, but that got changed after some feedback to the light bluish green you see now. Unlike Tokid's shiny, I adore this one. Umbra Bunga, the Fire Club Pokemon. Alright, our last pair of version-exclusive evolutions. This one is the evolved form of Charcadet when given the primitive armor. I wanted this Pokemon to be a full Unga Bunga caveman with that club, both in battle and mentally. Before this gem of a name was dropped on my lap, this was originally called Volcane Noir. I still think that is a brilliant name, but Umbra Bunga was too good to pass up on. The first pass of this design was trash. Granted, it was a rough sketch, but the chest armor was just terrible. The next pass was a lot better once I used the suggestion to make the top of the armor look like a neck protector a knight would use, and the top of a volcano. I also changed the slits on the eye shield to make it kind of look like a heater / boiler gate. I did have to go back and make the shapes on the gauntlets and shoes more consistent with that of the chest piece. Once the name was in place, the rest of this was fairly easy. The render took some effort, but nothing worth delving into. I still prefer giving these guys much better shinies than their official ones would lead you to believe. Seriously, what were they thinking with Armor Rouge and Charcadet? That's just sad. Mothmall, the Mothman Pokemon. Our final new evolution in the DLC, we finally have a new evolution for one of my own fakemon. This one being the evolved form of male Noctomoth once it reaches level 40 at night. I based this sucker off of the Mothman. I was going to make this his own unique Pokemon, but I thought making more evolutions for my own Pokemon would be fun, and this fit the bill perfectly. I thought doing a split evolution for a convergent Pokemon was fun, and I was right. Overall, the design wasn't too hard to iron out in a few passes. I mainly had to tone down the details in a few spots across the body to really let the wings take center stage. Mainly with the arms, they had to be simplified a few times. I just love doing cryptid Pokemon, and Mothman was near the top of my list for a while now for creatures that needed a Fakemon. This arguably has the best shiny of the entire DLC. It's at least in contention for me, anyway. Powder, the loyal pup Pokemon, our first fossil of the region. This is revived from the Lupin fossil and is based off of dire wolves. Once I saw the news story about them genetically recreating dire wolves, granted, only as close as they can get sans necromancy, I had to make a Pokemon based off of them. Compared to its final evolution, this Pokemon was a breeze to design. I wanted to make this pupper mid-air for a more interesting pose, and I thought it would just make this design have a lot more energy to it otherwise. Originally, this was going to be a mono ice type, but I thought Ice Rock specifically for this stage would be fine since it does change when it evolves. Speaking of which, Wolfrost, the Loyal Blade Pokemon. Fun fact, I worked on this stage first since I had the idea to make a Game of Thrones reference that came in late during development, so I ran with that design while the iron was still hot. The Zacian/Sith jokes were unavoidable, so I just ran with it. I did have to redo the fur cape a few times to get the shapes just right, with some good feedback guiding my hand. Getting that down was the hard part, but I did add the colored fur tips on the back later on to help with the overall color balance. Rendering the soul and the sword was also a pain in the ass, but I at least know how to do something like that now. I didn't think I'd ever really do a Game of Thrones reference for a Pokemon prior to this, but here we are. Aberrex, the mutant tyrant Pokemon. This monster was revived from the Twisted Helix and is based on the D-Rex from Jurassic World Rebirth. Easily, this was the more difficult fossil between the two. I've seen a lot of really good fakemon based on the D-Rex, so I wanted to make mine look a lot more distinctive compared to theirs. I went through a few passes to really get the head and neck where I wanted them to look. That easily took the longest time in the first pass with this Pokemon. Once I got that pass done, I received help in the form of a really good edited version of my then current design. The armored pieces, the tan colors, and the more defined chest area were all their major contributions. I edited the design they had for the back to become a pseudo spine/sail you see here. I thought the more defined shapes gave it a better silhouette and made the Pokemon look more unique. Still, I cannot thank them enough for their contributions. I love both fossils in this DLC. Orthlet, the Earthworm Pokemon. This little worm is the pre-evolved form of Earthworm, which evolves into our favorite Goober at level 24. So, funny story. I thought I had actually already uploaded this design earlier in the Dex, but apparently I had forgotten to do so, so that's why this Pokemon is so late in the Dex entries. This was definitely the easier of the two new baby Pokemon to design, but even then, this was a pain at times. I had a hard time figuring out how much to scale down from Earthworm for this Pokemon. The first pass wasn't bad, but I needed to give the arms more of a bend to them for a more dynamic looking pose. The line work on the central segment is rough. I'm not happy with how that came out in hindsight. This is unfortunately the weakest design of the DLC. UB Cloud, Kujera, the Ghost Whale Pokemon. Yay! Ultra Beast time! I regretted not having any in the Kyria reboot, so this was my only chance to rectify that mistake. This one is based on the Bake Kujira, a Japanese ghost whale. This was easily the most difficult of the Ultra Beasts introduced here. I went through so many passes, but most of them just looked too normal. At one point, based on a suggestion, I tried making it into a narwhal. You can see how well that went. The suggestion to make this into a sky whale saved my ass with this design, since the pass I had at the time was still too normal looking. Turning the ectoplasm covering the body into a cloud shape with a few bones sticking out was the perfect combo. This was Ghost Water for a long time, but that changed with the cloud design motif. I'm really proud of how this Pokemon came out, but damn did it make me work for it. UB Tower, Galvision, the Lightning Rod Pokemon. Next up, in the first of many new Kaiju Ultra Beasts, something I noticed I didn't have a lot of, it was time to give Gamera some more love. This Pokemon is based on Legion from Gamera 2, Attack of Legion, and Lightning Towers. The first pass wasn't bad at all, basically being the final design sans a few touch-ups, but it didn't read as easily as I wished, so I had to do colors a lot faster than normal to make more sense of it for other people. Since Legion is a weird-ass kaiju design, I basically had to make this Ultra Beast a crab with a tall-ass head and neck. The colors went through more than a few passes as well, mainly for the black and the light blue accents placed across the body. This is easily the weirdest Ultra Beast in this batch of designs. UB Depth, Clobbus, the Trench Dweller Pokemon. Next up, we have what was probably the easiest Ultra Beast to design of this batch. This Nightmare from the Deep is based on Clover from the first Cloverfield movie. Since Clover was already a weird kaiju design, it actually wasn't super hard to translate into an Ultra Beast. Most of the alterations I had to do were square off the elbow extensions, reposition the legs, and redo the tail a bit so I had an easier time reading it at a glance. Color-wise, this was also pretty simple. The only thing I debated were pure white or pure black eyes, and you can see which one won out in the end. Not a whole lot to say with this one, sadly, so moving on. UB Swoop, Snallygrasper, the Sky Snatcher Pokemon. Our final non-Kaiju Ultra Beast of the DLC, this flying asshole is based on a Snallygaster, cryptid from Maryland. I wanted to do more cryptid Pokemon, so I went for looking for the more obscure ones when I came across this freak of nature. It was so damn weird. I had to do something with it. The first pass wasn't bad, but the proportions were off and the face was underdesigned. The original design was too short, and the neck and tail weren't skinny enough for a better sense of flow. The feathers also at the end of the tail were weak sauce. The face, on the other hand, felt lazy. It only had 3 tentacles for a mouth underneath the beak, and the lack of interesting perspective was killing me. I tried another pass with a different pose, and while it wasn't great, many of the elements, when combined with the first pass, got me where I needed the final pass to be. I used the revised face, neck length, and general tail shape with the body plan and pose of the original. Not the most complicated or detailed design in the world, but sometimes simplicity is the best. UB Ripple, Frequency, the Wavelength Pokemon. Our final Ultra Beast and Kaiju of the DLC, this one being based on the Monsterverse's most recent darling, Titan X, aka Titanus Kokai, with a lot more Man-O-War elements thrown in. I love this Pokemon so much, so I waited until Season 2 was over before I decided on the type for this Pokemon. Considering how sound waves were so important for this creature and the human cast, I had to make it part sound type. I think this might actually outclass Kujera with how many passes it took to get this design down. I tried a lot of designs that were a lot closer to the source material, but lacked the Ultra Beast weirdness. I thought adding more Man-O-War elements would help, and they did, but they also came with their own headaches. The only thing consistent throughout every design were the tuning fork nose horns, since they are the focal point of the design after all. Eventually, I found a middle ground between all of my designs here. I do love the double helix eye. That was the main thing that sets Kokai apart from the rest of the Titans of the Monsterverse. The color balance also took a few tries, but once I added the bioluminescence to the top, this really came together nicely. If it wasn't Obvious enough already, this Pokemon is responsible for the events of the DLC. Wampusphere, the disappearing cat Pokemon, the first of 4 brand new mythical Pokemon. This one is based on the Wampus cat, a cryptid based out of the southern USA, and this one particular calls the Texcan region home. That's right, I'm going back and adding the mythical Pokemon I skipped out of from the Texcan region to the Kyria Preserve. These guys are why the DLC is called the Mythic Hunt, by the by. This weird-ass cryptid was too fun to ignore. The first pass was pretty close to perfect, only missing the stripes across the body to help break up the empty space. I did have to update the level of opacity for the overlapping legs. I also do think the opacity of the tail could have been done better, but it is what it is. This easily has the best shiny of the 4 mythicals introduced here. Jackal, the dual-sided Pokemon, the Mythic for the Vanek region. These two are based on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I 100% made this Pokemon a Jackal just so I could use that banger of a name. I did debate making this Pokemon a form change, but making it 2 conjoined Pokemon worked better for a single form. The Jekyll head in the back was definitely the one that gave me more trouble, mainly in terms of getting the head and neck to look right from this perspective. From here, the rest of the design was pretty easy. I did have a bit of trouble getting the right shades of each half of the body color-wise, but I am overall very satisfied with them. Nitrobillo, the Bomb Fist Pokemon, the mythical of the Amalop region. This prick is based off of sandbox trees, aka dynamite trees. The overall body plan was locked down fairly early, mainly the boxing glove fruits. Unfortunately, the perspective of the leaves up top with the OG design was terrible, and the spikes were just part of the bark like the basis of the tree. The next pass, I fixed the perspective of the leaves, and I made the spikes and the center of the fruits glow red hot for some visual flair. I added the pattern on the body to better resemble the bark of the actual tree and to break up the giant block of solid color the body would be otherwise. This is easily my favorite of the mythicals added, not even a question. Unfortunately, though, it does have the worst shiny of the quartet. Salbolt, the Lightning Antler Pokemon, our final new Pokemon, and the mythical of the Kyria Preserve. This is based on the Saloa. This unicorn of an animal is one of the rarest species on the planet, so it was the perfect choice to be the mythical of a nature preserve. The OG pass was solid, but the head proportions were off, so I had to shrink that bobblehead. Sadly, we kind of end on a nothing burger of a breakdown since this Pokemon was pretty easy. The colors might have given me a bit of trouble, but again, nothing worth really delving into. I did try to match the Saloa's natural markings as best I could, hence the dark brown legs. That's the most interesting thing I got to say there. I really do love the shiny with this one, however. I think the pinkish red and the light blue contrast very nicely. Okay, that's another DLC in the books. It was fun going back and giving more representatives to past regions, addressing some missed opportunities, and giving some old Pokemon new love. I will also take any opportunity I can to add Ultra Beasts to a fakemon project. Unfortunately, I am going to have to be honest with y'all. I may stop doing monthly videos for a while. During my time off, I really enjoyed not having to stress about getting these videos out every month. With how I do things, it'll take me too long to make content with the quality I want to give y'all. Plus, with the bigger projects I tend to do, it takes me so damn long to edit and render them. I want to make one thing clear. I am not quitting YouTube, but some things have got to change. I have videos I want to make for y'all, but I also have so many spinning plates right now, and videos are the ones I'm least attached to right now. So, TLDR. Videos will be uploaded when they're done, algorithms be damned. So consistent monthly uploads are going to stop for a while. Or I'm going to have to divide projects into multiple parts again. We'll see what ends up happening. I'm sorry if this upsets any of you, but I'm hoping the content I do have planned for the future more than makes up for it. See y'all when I see you next. This is Austin, signing out.